Welcome to Norse Code, the #1 podcast for your Minnesota Vikings. I'm your host and producer. My name is James Pagashnik. Thank you guys so much for listening. And at the other end of the tin cannon string, we have our analyst and co-host. You know him from numerous blogs and podcasts around the internet, most notably from theathletic.com. He is Mr. Useful Human, Arif Hassan. Arif, why is it every time I see Geno Smith out on the football field or even just listed, all I can think about is the time that he tried to collect money in a locker room setting and ended up with a broken jaw?
I think I know why, and that's because that is the most famous thing about Geno Smith.
It's almost like that. I feel like the announcers should just mention that every time he comes out.
It's getting to the point where it's like kind of weird that they don't mention it at all.
We're just trying to forget that he got into a fight in a locker room and had to miss several games.
A fight got into him, but he didn't.
He tried to collect some money, and regardless of whether or not he was right in the matter, he paid the price because as the quarterback of that team, as QB1, he then had to have his jaw wired shut. For how long? He missed at least 3 or 4 games as a result of that. I forget if it ended.
He missed the rest of the season. He didn't play in 2015, and that was like his last shot at starting.
Yep.
So like someone asked us, I don't think it made it in the mailbag, but someone asked us right before we recorded, hey, why does everybody love Geno Smith? And like, it's kind of because it's just funny that all this happened, but also he kind of got a bad rap. Like a bunch of people were like dogging him for being the one who got punched, and he missed the 2015 season. I don't know that he was really taking that many steps. Some people thought he was advancing, but he never really got the chance, right? And then since then, he's just been a backup, and he's got to be like pretty good on the whiteboard for him to have been a backup for this long. And his pre-draft experience was a bunch of draft analysts just insulting his intelligence in ways that didn't really fit who he was as a player. So he's just kind of always been in this weird, bad situation. And then, he got drafted to the Jets. So how is he going to stand a chance to do anything? But like, that's all you think of with him. So of course we like him. Him getting a comeback is hilarious. Also, I hear he's like a super nice dude, but like for the most part, it's because it's like funny as hell.
Yeah. I wasn't like, I looked away from the TV and I had missed the injury to Russell Wilson's fingers. And I just looked up and I saw Geno Smith up on the screen and I went, wait, what parallel universe is this? I don't understand this at all. This is crazy. And he was driving at the time. It's like, what is whatever. All right, well, welcome to this episode of Norse Code. Hope you guys are all doing well. We have a game to preview. We will be previewing the matchup with the Lions here in just a moment. But want to thank you guys so much for listening to Norse Code. If you would like to support the show, you can do so in a couple of different ways. You can go to patreon.com/NorseCode and donate there for $3.50 per month or $3.50. You can help keep the Loch Ness Monster at bay, help us remain ad-free, and you can get access to bonus materials that we put up for the show. You can also get access to a promo code, which will give you some cheap merchandise, which we'll talk about in a second. So check that out, patreon.com/NorseCode. We also provide breaking news out there too, in case you are interested in such things or if you need more James and Arif in your life. You can also go to paypal.me/NorseCode as well. That's more of a one-time donation. Or you can go to norsecode.threadless.com, like so many of you did over the past couple of days, and check out the new Christmas attire that is out there.
It's a hit.
People are in fact buying up the Norse Code Christmas stuff. The Arif line. Yeah. If we're being terrible. So check that out. You can get yourself
enthusiastically.
Yeah, you can enthusiastically pick up some Arif socks, some Arif Christmas socks. Of which the very existence of which has not stopped being hilarious to me. Yeah, so check that out, norsecode.threadless.com. Check that out. It's there's lots of stuff on there, including the regular logo. Both of them were done. Both of the designs were done by Dropplay Dave, who you might remember from a couple of episodes ago. Awesome guy, really like his work, and he was nice enough to provide us with not only a logo, but on the side ended up doing a little Christmas thing for us. So check that out. Again, norsecode.threadless.com. Patreon people can check their postings to see a code to get some cheaper merch as well. So check that out. Also, we do have a announcement that it's high time that we make, and everything appears to be falling into place. So just want to kind of, I ended up putting it together a bit of like almost a press release, but just kind of for the Patreon people. So here's what we have for you. We do have an announcement for the second live show, and we will be doing that on the East Coast. We'll be doing that here on November 4th between 7 and 8 p.m. We will be recording. We're going to be doing this in collaboration with the Nova Vikes, which is a Facebook group who mainly exists in the Washington, D.C., Virginia, and Maryland area. So we're going to be doing something over at their bar, their location, which is the Four Courts. It's Ireland's Four Courts on November 4th, starting between 7 and 8 p.m. It's the headquarters of the Nova Vikes, and it's a major gathering place for Vikings fans in the region, and they are excited to host Norse Code Nessie and all of our corners. We will be handing out some free merch and a free ticket to the Ravens-Vikings game, which will be happening on that Sunday. So check that out. Come and get into an argument with a Reef in person on November 4th. So this is actually going to be, so the way that the river works around Washington, D.C. is there's Washington, D.C., and then to the west across the river is Arlington, Virginia, which is where like the Pentagon is and Arlington National Cemetery and all that, of the big airport and everything. So we're actually doing it in Arlington, Virginia. So check us out on November 4th. Starting between 7 and 8 p.m., we'll have our big, this is not going to be the only time that we say this, so we'll be talking about this a lot coming up. So check it out, Four Courts, the Ireland's Four Courts bar. They've got drink specials, they've got food specials, they got a special place just for Vikings fans over there. So check us out in person for the Ravens game. I've heard that Damian Barrett is attempting to cash in all of his wife, all the goodwill he has with his wife, in order to potentially attend this. So there may be a Hall of Famer in your presence that day. It is very possible. I also tried to convince Don to drive there, but apparently he has a lack of hustle and bad attitude. So
yeah, classic Don. That's on a scouting report.
That really every year he's attempted to be in any form of a league. That's kind of been his deal. So check that out. That should be very interesting. All right, let's go to the Lions preview. This is an interview that Arif conducted earlier today with Jeremy Reisman. He is the editor of Pride of Detroit, and they talked all about the matchup coming this Sunday.
Right, I'm here with Jeremy Reisman, who's given me no indication for how to introduce him. He said beat writer or editor-in-chief or whatever is fine. You can find him at prideofdetroit.com. How you doing, man?
Great. Thanks for that wonderful intro.
Yeah, well, screw you, man.
No, I mean, you know what? It fits my current mood of the team of following yet another 0-4 start or whatever.
Another. Wow. Okay, cool. We're in a good spot emotionally. Yeah. Here to talk about I'm not even going to say underrated Lions. I usually, like, if a team is like losing, but you can kind of see the path to winning, you're like, yeah, I mean, they're underrated. They could, pull some wins out. And technically, yeah, I don't think the Lions are going to end winless. But I don't think they're underrated. I think that they're appropriately rated.
Right. I think that's fair too. I mean, the biggest sign of concern to me that this team isn't good is that Dan Campbell's already started pulling out the well, if one of these plays went in our favor and maybe one on offense, one on defense, well, we would have won that game. Like
we were just you're 6 plays away.
Yeah, you're not supposed to be pulling that excuse until at least November. And we just barely got out of September before we started hearing that.
Well, when Zimmer said we were 2 plays away from being 2-0, that was like true, and it didn't feel bad because they lost one game by a point and they went to overtime in the other game. Right. And so it was like, yeah, I know what you're getting at. But like the Lions, I don't know.
You can use that excuse, obviously, in the Baltimore game where you lose on a 66-yard field goal. But elsewhere, I don't know. Every other game, they were down by 3 scores at some point. So kind of hard to pull that excuse.
Yeah, if you take the 3 plays away, the scores, we were right in it. All right, so I'm going to find out about all of these players on the Lions. So typically what happens is like I'll go through a depth chart. I'll talk about some of these players, mention them if I like remember them from other plays or in college or whatever. Brief look at the depth chart already. I've got no clue who some of these guys are. That's either an indictment of me, which is totally fair, or an indictment of the Lions, which based on the record also seems totally fair.
We'll call it 80-20.
Okay, great. We'll start with the offense because the defense is more interesting. I'll say that. I don't. They're not like better than the offense, but like
true.
I like talking about these players more, so we'll do that.
Okay.
So offensively, I think the story for the Lions right now heading into this week is the offensive line. So we'll start there, and then we'll kind of just move around however the conversation flows. So they will probably not have Penei Sewell. They definitely don't have Frank Ragnow. They definitely don't have Taylor Decker. Am I missing anybody?
No, I think that covers the gamut of injuries on the offensive line. Now, the only thing I would add is that I was at practice today on Thursday, and Penei Sewell was out there kind of practicing his pass sets off to the side with the trainer. And, it looked like I would say there's a small chance he plays this week. Sure. Because, it certainly looked like he was trying. And there were reps that it looked like he was struggling at, and you could see he was in a little bit of pain. But he went through it for a good, we're there for 15 minutes. He was doing it all 15 minutes. Whereas a guy like TJ Hockenson, who I'm sure we'll get to, did not do much while we were out there. But yeah, so your left tackle is gone. Your backup left tackle is potentially gone. You're starting a guy named Will Holden, who has a start or two at left tackle, but has basically jumped around to a bunch of different teams. Your right tackle in this game is probably going to be Matt Nelson, who is a converted defensive lineman.
That's where I remember him. I was talking to you on your podcast the other day.
Yep.
And I was like, Matt Nelson, Iowa. I don't remember an offensive lineman. I remember a Nelson from Iowa, but that's Anthony Nelson, the defensive end. But like, do I remember Matt Nelson? Okay, this makes more sense.
Yeah, and he's kind of a hoot when he's in front of the media because he does not shy away from the fact that he doesn't know the position yet, and he'll straight up say like, I'll run into moments in this game and I'll do something weird. And then the offensive line coach will ask me in the film room, why did you do that? And he's like, I don't know. I'm learning this position. and so like, it's really kind of fascinating hearing a professional athlete being like, I don't know what I'm doing out there. And to his credit, like he hasn't been awful. Like obviously there are nuances to the position that, you're 2 years into this transition, you're still learning, and he's held up all right. But
I would say if you hadn't told me that story, my view of his game is, man, he's really bad. Now that I know this story, I think he is doing shockingly well.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's kind of it. And Lions have similar stories happening in their secondary too, where people are changing positions and don't know what they're doing. But kind of just the story of the team in general. And I, cynicism aside, like this unit has been working kind of okay for the first 3 weeks. Obviously, it'll be different now without Frank Ragnow and potentially without Penei Sewell, but they've been able to run the ball pretty well. And you look at some of the statistics, like this is a team that gets a lot of yards before contact with their running backs and doesn't get a lot of yards after contact with their running backs. So I still think there's a chance that they run the ball okay in this game. I thought Evan Brown did a pretty darn good job in the final 3 quarters against the Bears last week without any weak preparation, just kind of having to jump in there for Frank Ragnow. So it's a ragtag group for sure. And it's probably not the greatest week to have this new formation of guys working together, but I think maybe there's a little bit of hope down the line that it could work for a little bit.
Okay. So the story with Penei Sewell was meant to be a right tackle.
Yeah.
And then Taylor Decker got hurt, so they're like, well, we'll put him back at left tackle where he's more used to it. And he was bad at right tackle in the preseason, and people were kind of making fun of the Lions for it because easy target.
Sure.
But at left tackle, he looked fine.
He actually, I mean, the first 2 games he looked really, really good, I would say. Like everyone's like, oh, this is where this guy is going to play. Like everyone was starting to have conversations. What do we do when Decker is healthy? Are we moving him to right tackle? We kind of have to move him to right tackle. He's playing really, really good. And then the last 2 games happen. It's like, oh, right. He's still a rookie. He's still going to go through some troubles. This is a guy who also did not play football in 2020. So, I think people are coming back down to a reality a little bit. And I think once both players are healthy, I think the plan will still remain to put Sewell back at right tackle where, it's something he's going to have to learn. The pass sets are obviously a lot different. Every offensive lineman, I think, has joined the Twitter conversation about Penei Sewell at this point, saying wiping your butt with your opposite hand, that sort of gross analogy that everyone seems to like. But
I don't there's so many things that you do with your hands. You don't have to go to that one.
Yeah.
That's a choice you make.
It is.
Okay.
Offensive linemen are weird people. I think.
That's fair. Yeah. All right. So Danielle Hunter, surprisingly effective. Everson Griffin, something I still think you don't believe me when I say that.
Well, here's the thing. I believe it now. I'm not sure if I'm going to believe it if it's still happening in November.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, fair enough. I get it. But yeah, surprisingly effective Everson Griffin. No Michael Pierce for this game, probably. So we've got Dalvin Tomlinson. And probably a Sheldon Richardson. Maybe we'll see a little bit of James Lynch, probably not. Hearing those names, and Armand Watts, hearing those names and knowing kind of who's going to be on the offensive line, maybe not necessarily where, but it sounds like it'll be Holden, Jackson, Brown, Vaitai, Nelson.
Yep.
What are kind of the prospects? Because Goff is getting rid of the ball kind of quickly.
Yeah.
So, he doesn't avoid sacks with his mobility, but he gets rid of the ball. So, what do you think when you see kind of that offensive line and you hear about that defensive line unit?
It's not good visions that I have. I mean, this line's offensive line has notoriously had a ton of issues with this Vikings defense, and a lot of the same names are returning. Anthony Barr too, potentially back in this game, affecting the pass rush. I think the problem here is that the Lions also don't have a lot of receiving threats outside of short yardage guys. TJ Hawkinson, again, questionable at best for this game. If he's not there, then you're just relying on Swift, which means if none of these guys are getting open, which has kind of been the case through 3-4 weeks, this wide receiver ragtag group of guys that no one's ever heard of, Goff kind of panics. If his first read isn't there, he will hold on to the ball and he will try to scramble and he will probably fumble the ball. And so I have to imagine that's probably going to happen in this game. If I'm being completely honest, he's not very protective of the football, and he's proven that. I just don't think his trust has developed with these receiving threats yet. And I mean, it's understandable. A lot of these guys were added right towards the end of training camp. A guy like Rashad Perriman never worked out, so the Lions are just scrambling to get a number 2 somewhere. And it's a new system for everybody, so. Learning curve, new faces, all this sort of stuff is not working in Goff's favor. But I mean, this has also kind of been the book on Goff for the past 2 years. Is he's not trusting himself downfield. He's not willing to test his arm against good coverage, and so I think he's going to get swallowed up a lot in this game.
Cool. Well, let's talk about those receivers then. So Quintez Cephas, I like him. When I mentioned him, the Twitch chat mentioned that you're not actually a huge fan. Or probably relative to other Lions fans, I would imagine.
I think that's the more accurate thing. People are excited about him because he was a draft pick and all that sort of stuff.
Because he was unlike almost literally the entire rest of the receiver corps. So that's
right.
Fair.
Yes, exactly. He's a talented guy in terms of I think he's good at contested catches. He's a physical guy that can go up and get something. I feel like that was just me repeating the same thing twice there.
Sure.
He's just not a guy, I don't think, that creates a lot of separation, and he's not the kind of receiver this team was looking for when they started anew. They're looking more for the fast, twitchy options, and that's just not who he is. I still think he can find success in this offense, and we saw a flicker of that last week when he set a career high of 81 yards, I think it was. But it's just, I don't know. There's nothing flashy about his game. And in a lot of ways, you could probably say the same about the other draft pick, Amon-Ra St. Brown. But I like Amon-Ra quite a bit better.
Well, let's talk about it. Why do you like him quite a bit better?
I think he's much more of a technician with his route running. He's also just a joy to watch as a pass blocker, as a run blocker, I should say. That dude is just his competitive spirit. I don't know if I've ever seen something like that at the wide receiver level. Like I feel like he has the mindset of a linebacker, but in a wide receiver body. And again, like not the fastest guy.
Like Jarvis Landry.
Yeah. I mean, he's drawn comparisons to Hyde and Sword, and probably not fair to compare a rookie to a Hall of Famer, but it is kind of he's kind of built in the same mold, I would say. And so we're still kind of waiting for his breakout game at this point. Didn't have a lot of catches through the first 3 games. Set a career high last week, but we're talking 60 yards or so. So, he's definitely the most fascinating out of the group, I would say. But still kind of coming into his own.
All right, so Khalif Raymond, most NFL fans won't have heard of him. Vikings fans will, because Raymond has only ever gotten more than 70 yards once in his career, and it was the 118 he put up against the Vikings on my birthday. I mean, in 2020 for the Titans.
So he scarred you.
Yeah. No, I mean, the Vikings traditionally lose on my birthday. This is not new.
Okay.
Yeah, it's I don't know what it is about like week 3 or whatever. They actually won against Seattle this year. It was shocking to see a win on. Sure. I don't know why I bring guests onto the show that are like on Twitter. That's not useful for me. But Vikings fans kind of remember him as a deep threat. It's interesting because he averaged like 40 yards of reception against the Vikings, but still had no touchdowns. He's like a deep threat that like does not really get into the end zone. I know he had 2 against Chicago, but it felt like kind of like whatever.
Sure.
What do you see out of him? Is he like, if the Lions had an average receiving core, does he break like a 3 receiver set?
Probably not. I don't think so. I think he's best used in the slot, but they got Amon-Ra there and no one on the outside, so he's an outside receiver now. I would say the Lions are finding creative ways to use him, though. I mean, the last 2 weeks he's made an impact, positively mostly. They used him against the Ravens. Key moment of the game, they threw a bubble screen to him, and he took it for about 25 yards, put him in field goal range to take the lead late. And like you said, scored 2 touchdowns last week. There's a lot of pre-snap motions with him. They're really trying to utilize that short area speed with him. So screens, the second touchdown that he scored, I thought was really interesting. They sent him in motion before the snap, and then when the snap happened, went right back in the direction he came and beat the defenders out to the edge and just barely scored a 3 or 4 yard touchdown. But that's how the Lions, I think, are going to try to utilize him, is just short area speed and not the downfield threat that I guess Vikings fans are used to seeing. That's just not what the Lions are trying to do right now with really anybody.
Him or Marvin Hall?
Yeah, Marvin Hall is that's a name I remember. he was that. I mean, I think he finished 2019, was it, with like 30 yards per catch? Insane.
No, you had like these nuts depth of target numbers as a receiver. Yeah, 37 yards per reception in 2019.
Yeah, there you go. I don't know if Goff has thrown a
7 receptions.
I don't think Goff has thrown a single pass 37 yards.
That's fair. So. Yeah, not much you could do with Marvin Hall when Goff is the quarterback, I guess. Who the hell is Tom Kennedy?
He is your classic former lacrosse player turned white receiver.
Wait, he went to a college called Bryant?
Yep. That sounds right.
Bryant. I'm Googling this as we speak. Bryant football. Second in Northeast. They're an FCS team. I did not know that. I've watched a decent amount of FCS football. I did not know that.
But yeah, he's hung around the practice squad for a year or two. Definitely like had Patriots guy written all over him. But, he, considering how awful the Lions wide receiver core was this training camp, he actually kind of stood out as a guy that was making some plays. And I don't think he's been active yet this year. So probably not going to see him on Sunday, but kind of a weird, interesting guy on the roster that's just kind of hung around.
Sure. Then there's also Trinity Benson, East Central Oklahoma. I remember him doing well in my athleticism metrics. And then Kadarrell Hodge. Also, I think he's like an FCS guy or Division II, like Prairie View, I think. Made some waves with the Browns. I think he's kind of one of those guys that ended up being a fan favorite with Browns fans. Any chance we see either of those players?
Yeah. They've actually been playing a little bit. They're really high on Trinity Benson for whatever reason. They traded for him. They traded, I think, a 6th round pick for him at the roster cuts. So they believe he's got something, and I think you nailed it.
You sound skeptical.
It's the athletic traits, right? He's a guy on the Browns who I think some thought might be able to create the roster, or crack the roster, but they're pretty crowded there at wide receiver, and the beat writers over in Cleveland seem to think that there might be something there. He's just again young, just learning the offense, just getting into rhythm with a new quarterback. I don't think this is a guy that anyone really expects to be a guy that can crack a 3 wide next year, hopefully. But he's an interesting guy that I think as the season goes on, you'll see more of him. I just don't. He came to the team after training camp, so I haven't seen him do anything. Sure. Basically, that's my thoughts on it.
All right, running backs: Jamal Williams runs hard. DeAndre Swift doesn't ? But does catch the ball.
Yeah, I don't think I have to add anything. I think you kind of nailed it. Swift is kind of an interesting one because people were really high on him after that Ravens game because they involved him a lot in the passing game. He looked very shifty, very elusive. A bunch of yards after the catch, but as a runner, he just really hasn't broken out, and he was very bad last week against the Bears, especially as a pass protector.
Yeah.
And so I think this coaching staff really does like Jamal Williams, and for good reason. Like you mentioned, dude runs really hard, doesn't isn't fancy about it. Like he sees the hole and he runs through it. And the lines are, like I said, creating some holes on offense. So if you find a guy that can just run out there and get 6, 7, 8 yards on first down, like that's your dude. Unfortunately, it just leaves the Lions again, like they are in the passing game, just without kind of a deep threat right now because Swift isn't running the ball well. And Jamal Williams isn't a home run threat. So you're just kind of left with like, okay, I guess we'll get, 6, 7 yards and be happy with that. And hopefully we can turn, the next 3 or 4 yards in the next 2 downs and keep this thing alive.
Who's that super athlete that they had at running back a little bit ago? Like a white guy from Eagan, Minnesota, crazy testing numbers.
Ooh.
A couple years. You know who I'm talking about?
I probably should. You're not talking about Zach Zenner, clearly.
No, I am.
Oh, you are talking about Zach Zenner. Was he that athletic? I guess maybe
he's testing. I didn't say he was athletic on the field.
Okay.
I'm saying that his testing numbers were absolutely wild. Let me see if I can pull them up. South Dakota State. So at 223 pounds, so his hand timed 40 was a 4.50, which is different than his electronic 40, just a 4.6. But the things that stood out, he had a 41-inch vert and a 10.1 broad jump with a 7.08 3 cone, which at 223 pounds is like wild.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, and he ran a 6.88 3 cone at his pro day. Jesus.
Okay. Well, pro day,
yeah, but it doesn't count. All right. Anyway, Jamar Jefferson, I have him on my taxi squad on my fantasy team. Should I get rid of him?
He hasn't been active yet, and
the taxi squad.
Sounds like the only way he'll get it active is if he performs on special teams, and that's something that they're teaching him, but probably doesn't happen until about halfway through the season. He'll be active at some point. I don't know if he gets his hand on the ball ever, unless injury happens. And given the way this roster is going, wouldn't count that out.
In 2023, do you think you see him with the ball in his hands?
2023.
I got him. This is not for the podcast. This is for me personally. I got to find out if he's worth a taxi squad spot.
Maybe.
On my roster.
I kind of liked him. I liked him coming out, and I'm certainly of the ilk where I don't like teams spending high resources on running back. So 7th round pick, getting the ball in 2023, I'm in.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because he's like competing with like Anthony Schwartz. It's not like an intense competition for a roster spot. Okay. I had Amir Smith-Marset, and then he was getting poached, so I had to put him on my regular roster. Nuts. Doesn't matter. He's like injured right now. Anyway, I guess what would normally be the leading light of the Lions offense would be the tight end group, right? But
sure,
they don't have any. That's my read on this. They've got like 2 on IR, and then TJ Hawkinson might not play this week.
Yeah. I don't know exactly what happened there, but finished the game last week against the Bears. Hasn't practiced in the first 2 weeks, so they listed him as limited today on Thursday. But when we were out there, he basically went through like 2 minutes of warm up and was like, nope, and then walked away and was off the field. So either he came back after the media left, or that was the
very limited participation.
Yeah, that was as limited as you could possibly get while still getting the limited participation. If it's not him, Darren Fells is kind of a good overall player, but not anything like TJ Hawkins. Not really a receiving threat, more of a blocking guy. But
is Darren Fells like 6'9" or something?
Yeah. Oh God, he's huge. He's huge, absolutely huge. So he might slip out and catch one if no one's watching, which is possible.
That happens. Yeah.
Not that it's easy for a 6'9" guy to hide anywhere, but if he like falls down and does one of those plays where it's like it looks like he meant to fall down and slip out, that could work. Other than him, I think the game plan there is probably use your fullback, because they are obsessed with Jason Kabinda, who a former linebacker turned fullback. They love the dude. I feel like he caught more passes than Brashad Perriman in training camp.
Good Christ. All right.
So he might play some tight end in this game, and that'll be a fun little ride.
I have to. I mean, the Vikings. So when the Vikings were thin at tight end before they brought in Chris Herndon, who they don't use, and Ben Ellefson, who they love and use, they were like, yeah, CJ Ham can play tight end. Don't worry about it. And we're like, you know what? We'll worry about it, actually. You're wrong. I'm going to worry about it. And then I think this all, like, the way we talk about the offense, it all kind of revolves around Jared Goff. Like, obviously, there's not enough talent at receiver. That offensive line unit that could have made an argument for top 10 heading into the preseason is now in shambles. The running back group is kind of not what the Lions envisioned that would be at this point 2 years ago. But it's really a conversation that is about Jared Goff. Is there a way, first of all, what do you see from Jared Goff now? And second, is there a way for Jared Goff to kind of reclaim what we saw of him in like 2018?
To answer your second question first, this year, no. I mean, the Lions just don't.
Okay.
They just don't have the talent right now. Like,
Is it required? Because obviously that 2018 unit had like 3 stunningly good receivers. Right. They had a great offensive line with Andrew Whitworth, who hopefully just by virtue of PFF alone makes the Hall of Fame. And they had tight ends that they didn't use, but were actually turned out to be talented, and a good running game. So obviously he had a great supporting cast, but it felt like he was like throwing dimes too, right?
Yeah, he was. Like, I don't want to take anything away from the season he had, but like, he had confidence. He had an offensive coordinator / head coach that wanted him to take a bunch of shots, and that's just not what the Lions want to do right now, and not what they're capable of doing either. Like, that's the one thing about Anthony Lynn is I think he knows what he has in this team, and he's trying to do what he can with a limited roster, with a team that wants to probably run the ball because that's what they're built to do. And so he's kind of more not checkdowns necessarily, although he does love a good checkdown. I think at some point this offseason, he literally said the words "checkdowns are a quarterback's best friend," which should have been a warning sign.
It's so brutal when that's who you are. Right. Like if Patrick Mahomes says that, you're like, God, that guy's smart. He gets it. Right. But when it's like a Christian Ponder or a Jared Goff, even Kirk Cousins, who does like sling it down the field, or not this year, but like has been slinging it down the field at a really high rate over his career, you're just like, man, this dude, screw this guy.
Yeah, but I think the best way I can describe what the Lions are trying to do on offense, and this is going to sound weird, but I think it's almost like a bend, don't break offense. Like,
that's dumb.
Let's just slowly bend the defense and hope that we don't self-destruct. And unfortunately, Jared Goff has proven to be a guy that can self-destruct at times, especially under pressure. Not a very mobile guy at all, although he throws kind of well on the run if it's a designed run. And so I think we might see a little bit more of that, especially with an offensive line that is concerning. Yeah, something like that. A rollout, whatever. I mean, the interesting thing is they've run a couple zone reads with him, and one time he held it.
That guy has negative college rushing yards.
I think he gained like 18 yards on it. Like it
amazing.
It worked. And I wouldn't be completely surprised to see him pull it out again in this game again because like
Yeah,
they
might
just
as
need to
well.
get him out of harm's way at this point.
The way you describe that offense it makes it feel like if the Chiefs are like a sniper rifle, the Lions would be a slingshot with like a rotting sling, right? That like you have to
Yeah.
you have to warm it up, otherwise it will snap if you pull it back too far.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, that's what they are. And maybe once the receivers all get set and there's a little bit of comfortability that there, maybe they get a little more aggressive, maybe they get a little more tricky, but just, I mean, you look at his air yard attempts, I think it's like 3.3 right now.
Yeah, it's like second lowest in the league. Well, it's not second lowest; it's like third lowest. But there's some short passing offenses this year. I gotta say, like I think in another year, in another typical year over the past 5 years, Goff's current air yards per attempt would be like fairly low.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So defense. I think a lot of these players are super interesting. The defense is not really gelling in any serious way.
No.
But these players, I just kind of like them for random reasons. So Michael Brockers, the nose tackle that lines up on the edge.
Yep.
Yeah. Tell me about this weirdo.
I mean, the Lions traded for him, I should say, from the Rams, which has got to be I don't know if you remember the controversy at the time, but like he had said something about how excited he was that Matthew Stafford was there because now they have a chance to be a contender. And then, oops, you get traded to join Jared Goff in Detroit. Yeah, definitely a little awkward and probably sucks for him. But he's getting the majority of the reps there at kind of the 3 and the 5 and wherever they want to line him up there. And he's viewed as kind of a silent leader because I feel like we've asked him 3 or 4 times this year, like, are you, you're the veteran of the group. We got a bunch of young guys around him. Are you the leader? He's like, I kind of lead by example. And so that's usually a sign that like, no, not really. But the coaches really seem to push him as a leader. So
right. Yeah.
I don't know who's lying at this point. Probably maybe the coaches. But either way, above average player, but certainly not as flashy when you don't have Aaron Donald next to you.
He's like primarily kind of like a set the edge, stuff the box kind of run stuffer, right?
Yeah, and I do think that's what the Lions are basically trying to do for early down stuff is stop the run because they think, and I think they might be right, that Anthony Lynn can drop some interesting pressures on third down if you get into an obvious passing down. And the Lions, shockingly, are the second best team in third down defense for whatever reason. But the caveat to that is they've also faced by far the fewest third downs in the league because they can't get off the field on first and second down. They're one of the worst first and second down teams. And so,
okay. Well,
yeah, stopping the run has not succeeded thus far, and wouldn't put too much on Brockers. The Lions are going through some issues at the second level, pretty much at every level that isn't defensive tackle at this point. So,
sure. There were 2 defensive tackles drafted by right after they drafted an offensive tackle. They draft 2 defensive tackles. It's like a very, this is a Dan Campbell team.
Right.
And then last year, you also had John Pennicini, who I believe was statistically the worst pass rusher in the NFL, but that's not his job.
No.
So McNeil, Pennicini, nose tackles, right? And then Levi Wuzurike. I think I got that.
Close enough. Yeah, you got it.
3-5, kind of like Michael Brockers.
Exactly. Yep, you got it. And basically, Aleem has been the starter from the get go at nose. So you'll see him a lot. He's actually he's developed a nickname in Detroit, Twinkle Toes, which is fantastic. And I don't want to
Flintstone? Dope.
Yeah, essentially. But he's basically only been out there as a run defender. I think there's a little bit to unlock there as a pass rusher too, and that's what the Lions and really what we got excited for because we saw some of those one-on-one reps in training camp, but he's just not been out there for whatever reason in passing down. So he's just kind of been a boring nose tackle so far, and nothing too exciting about his game thus far. Levi's kind of been a slightly bigger disappointment in that he's just not getting a ton of reps behind Nick Williams, behind Michael Brockers. And so that's another thing we're just kind of waiting.
I remember like the draft community getting like too high on him, adjusting, putting him back in the first round, taking him out of the first round, putting him back in the first round. Then he gets drafted in the second round, so that should be like kind of a steal, right? We're not getting anything out of him.
Yeah, nothing yet. I mean, there was also kind of a back issue. At some point, he was seeing a back specialist in training camp, and that's always, a huge red flag. Back issues, not exactly something you want to hear out of a defensive lineman, but apparently all those things are done, and he missed a good portion of camp with that too. So I think just good to play the patient game here. The Lions are really trusting, I think, their veterans on the defensive front right now to kind of lead by example. And then at some point, I feel like they're going to pull the trigger and switch things up, much like they did at linebacker.
Yeah. And then at line, so let's talk about the edge discussion a little bit. So we saw a lot of Austin Bryant last week because Romeo Okwara got injured. He's out. How does that impact the way, because the Lions do run a number of different fronts, how does that impact the way that they'll be able to run the fronts that they typically would like to run?
It's tough because Romeo was a guy who literally the week before had played 100% of the snaps, which you really don't see very often for edge guys. They like to rotate those guys to give them a break. But I mean, you'll mostly kind of see that 3-4 front with Aleem at the nose and Brockers and Williams outside of them, and then Trey Flowers hopefully over the left tackle, and then like you said, it's probably going to be Austin Bryant over the right, and that's what I think their base is. I think that's what they're really going to show a lot of, and sometimes they go 4-man fronts, and they would have preferred to have Romeo Okwara in there, but I think this is an opportunity to get his brother in there. Julian hasn't had a ton of reps so far, really, in his career. He's been getting about 10 to a dozen this year.
He's the highest rated PFF player on the Lions.
Right.
28 snaps, but I mean...
Yeah, and the concern there is setting the edge, and that's something that Romeo was getting really good at. That's something that Trey Flowers is very, very good at, is setting the edge, and that's where they got killed by the Bears last week, is Austin Bryant not very good at that yet. Julian Okwara wasn't very good at it in the preseason.
You say yet as if Austin Bryant's going to click with his third team.
No, this is his first team.
No, this is his first team. I was thinking about Charles Harris. My bad.
Charles Harris, yes. That's a whole different. And Charles Harris has actually looked a little bit better than I think anyone expected.
On.
Better than expectation. Not good. I didn't say good, Arif. Well, let's settle down here. But I mean, the only reason I say that with Austin Bryant is super young guy who also just dealt with a ton of injuries early in his career. And so this is basically kind of, I wouldn't say his rookie year, but not far from it. And same thing with Julian Okwara. Injuries. Just not that full-fledged player yet. He was a good pass rusher in Notre Dame, not a lot else. And so that's where I think teams might be able to beat them where they wouldn't when Romeo's in the game is really setting, tricking these guys to really crash down into the pocket and beat them over the edge because that's what the Bears did last week and it worked really well.
Okay. And do you expect Trey Flowers to play in this game? And if he does, how big of an impact do you expect from him?
I think he does. He's wearing a lot on his leg at this point to protect that knee. But
like Big Ben style, giant bags of ice.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like it at this point. And so that dude is just like a football robot. He loves the game. A perfect Matt Patricia guy. Like, you can yell at that guy all you want. He just wants to go out there and play. As to his impact, I guess it depends on his health. I think edge guys tend to need their knees. So if his is working, then he'll probably be okay. But he's, like I said, he's a guy that does set the edge very, very well and gives you everything he's got. But he's just kind of a so-so pass rusher too. So like if that's the concern there, and obviously I think it might be given, the left tackle you guys are dealing with right now. I don't know if I would be that concerned about him as an edge rusher. But in terms of running the ball on that end, I think he'll probably do a good job.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about linebacker. Boy.
Mm-hmm.
So you got Alex Anzalone, a guy who at the Senior Bowl looked pretty good, has never been healthy, not in high school, not in college, not in the NFL, had like probably one good season with the Saints. And by one good season, I don't mean like a full season, but like the games that he happened to play that season were good. but has not looked like he plays at that level with the Lions.
Sure.
I've seen a lot of Jalen Reeves-Maybin on the field. I assume that makes him the second linebacker or interior linebacker.
Yeah, he's basically splitting time with the rookie Derek Barnes this point. Yeah.
And Barnes is like fairly inexperienced, what I remember, given his college background at Purdue. He was like half pass rusher, half linebacker.
Basically
could have played an Anthony Barr role, might have played a Jamie Collins role if Jamie Collins wasn't like secretly a defensive tackle. Sorry, the one coverage rep that went pseudo viral just like lives in my mind now.
Yeah.
Is that, and then there's our lads is telling me there's a guy named Anthony Pittman,
special teamer.
Cool.
You don't need to know him.
Okay, so there's three guys.
Yeah.
So Alex Anzalone is a full timer, and then Jalen Reeves-Maybin and Derek Barnes are like kind of switching off. What are kind of the roles that they play within those different personnel packages, and what happens if like literally any of them get hurt?
I don't know if I have an answer for your second question.
Cool.
More panic, I imagine. So yeah, Anzalone is their 100% guy. He's the guy with the green dot, all that sort of stuff. And then I don't know if they've carved out specific roles for Barnes and Jalen Reeves-Maybin. The first game after they cut Jamie Collins, it was almost a 50-50 split exactly. Last week it was heavily swayed towards Jalen Reeves-Maybin. I think he's more trusted in third downs in terms of, coverage. I think they trust him a little bit more there because, like you said, Barnes was an edge guy for his first 2 years at Purdue and then became an off-ball linebacker that senior year of his. So still very new to the position, still very new to the NFL. So I think they trust Jalen a little bit more, but Derek Barnes is really kind of a fascinating guy because his sideline to sideline speed is crazy. His motor is crazy. Another guy that's just like Dan Campbell absolutely loves him. And it's why he loves Alex Anzalone too. Like that is a guy that has never given up on a play.
Anzalone has to love football at this point.
Yes.
There's no way he could go through all the stuff he's gone through and not absolutely be in love with the game.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think that's the best thing you can say about anyone at the linebacker core is like, these are really
they just having fun out there.
They're having a blast. But Anzalone, I mean, good coverage linebacker, not very good at much else. Can't shed blocks, can't tackle particularly well. Barnes, I think, has a higher upside, but he's also kind of has those same limitations. He's small. The Lions are trying to get smaller at linebacker because they were playing 270-pound linebackers last year and just getting toasted in coverage.
Like a pair of Ray Malugas. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so the Lions just can't seem to find that middle ground of a guy who can shed blocks, tackle, and cover. Not that that's an easy person to find.
Yeah, not a ton of Eric Kendricks out there.
No, exactly. But yeah, they're still very much trial and error right now at linebacker, which is probably going to be a common theme as we talk about the rest of the defense as well.
So the Vikings offensive line really needs like a get back game after how embarrassing it was to play the Browns.
Yeah.
The way you seem to be describing the second level group and some of the first level, not like a ton of it, but like some of the first, but like mostly the second level group is that this could be that game.
Yeah. I mean, it is.
Okay, great.
The Chicago Bears came in last week getting humbled
also by the
Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, actually. Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
9 sacks in that game. And I think the Lions got to him once and gave up almost 200 yards rushing. So, I mean, yeah, the blueprint is there.
So I was already going to start Dalvin Cook, but like start Dalvin Cook.
Yeah. Or, I mean, Madison, depending on who plays, maybe.
Right, yeah, fair enough. I mean, it sounds like Dalvin Cook will play. He's just going to be like, yeah, I 100%, I'm definitely hurt. I'm so playing. It's a very weird way to like tell us everything. All right, well, let's get to the pride of the defense, the defensive back group. So they just see more screen time than everybody else. I just assumed.
Yeah.
Sorry. So we've got what is it? A pair of undrafted rookies starting. What's going on here?
I mean, so basically everything blew up already.
Also, one of them's a running back. Is that right?
No, no. There was a okay. So a safety turned into a running back. That happened. But Godwin Igwebuike was a safety, and now he's a running back who is ahead of
not like
Jamar
bad.
Jefferson on the
He's
depth
not
chart.
bad. Yeah.
No, I mean he's doing okay. Not touching the ball at all on offense at this point, and they took him off kick returns because he was fumbling. But other than that, he's great.
other than like having an impact. Cool.
Yeah. But yeah, so Amani Oruware, we'll start with the normal one. 5th round pick a couple years ago, who's been okay. I mean, probably an
classic draft steal according to Draft Twitter. I remember.
Yes, yeah, he was a guy that everyone thought was going to go in the 2nd round, goes in the 5th. So every fan still thinks he's amazing, and he's okay. He's fine.
Okay,
he's acceptable, I think, for a CB2. Probably a guy you'd rather have coming off the bench, but he's okay.
So up against Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson. Kind of worried.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. The other outside spot, probably undrafted rookie. Starting there.
You got to be more specific because there's a couple.
Jerry Jacobs.
Okay.
Sorry. Since we just talked about Jamar Jefferson, I was getting my double J's mixed up. Jerry Jacobs, a guy who probably barely made the team and was kind of under the tutelage of Jeff Okudah.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace. Hasn't started a game. He saw his first action on defense last week late in the game because the other option, Bobby Price, who was in his 2nd year after spending all of last year on the practice squad, converted from safety to corner 2 months ago because the Lions were like, we don't have any cornerbacks because Quentin Dunbar was dealing with a death in the family and he basically missed all of training camp. They're like, okay, you can't play for us anymore. And the Lions just didn't have the depth there, and they lose not only Okudah, they lose Ifeatu Melifonwu, their 3rd round pick.
Mm-hmm. The better Melifonwu, yeah.
Yeah, so they're just completely out of bodies at this point. So Jerry Jacobs is probably the next man up. Defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn actually said today that they're going to split time, him and Bobby Price, which
cool,
interesting strategy.
Yeah.
I don't see a lot of corner rotations in this league. So
the Vikings did it a couple of years ago with Terrence Newman and Trey Waynes, and that actually worked out wonderfully. I was shocked.
Were they both undrafted guys by any chance?
No. Famously, they're both 1st round picks.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so might work out a little different in this scenario. And then AJ Parker, undrafted rookie, is starting at the slot, and he's actually kind of done okay. And I know,
look, dude, what I saw was not kind of okay. Now it wasn't coverage; it was all tackling.
Yes, there was some tackling issues last week.
Well, sorry, I saw
his
like
career, all of them last week.
I was like, this dude is at Cape, man. He's on for a ride.
Yeah.
So when I brought up on your podcast, like how he might be the only worst tackling cornerback or defensive back than Xavier Woods, you were like, that's unfair, Arif. He's an undrafted rookie. And then the whole Twitch chat was like, I can't believe this guy is digging on an undrafted rookie. And I was just like, look, he's out there playing, man. What am I supposed to say? He's like, oh, I'm grading him on a curve. Dave Montgomery only gained 4 yards. Like, I don't know what to do about this.
Well, so I think Lions fans get a little defensive about him because he's actually a guy who won the position. Like he won the slot job in training camp, not because of injury, not because, well, I mean, partially because they didn't have a lot of other great options, but he went out and impressed. And like through the first 2 games of the season, he also impressed. Like he was actually, I mean, he is kind of okay against the run. He's putting himself in the right position. Missed tackles has been an issue the past 2 weeks. And David Montgomery's not an easy guy to take down. So that needs to be factored in at least a little bit there. But
now he gets to go against Dalvin Cook.
Yeah. Well, but an
injured Dalvin Cook. But I mean, like, also a league leader in forced missed tackles.
Sure. It could certainly be an issue this week. No question.
And then at safety, Tracy Walker is all right. Right. And then like Will Harris is like kind of not.
Yeah. And I don't like this is maybe the part that confuses me the most because Tracy Walker has been that guy where it's just like every year is about to be his breakout year.
That's what I feel like.
And I think part of it is maybe like they just need to find someone to pair with this guy so that you can trust both sides of the defense there. And I don't know, there's communication issues. There's I feel like they just don't know what to do with Tracy Walker because they can't trust the other side because they keep cycling through guys now at this point, and they're doing a safety rotation at this point too. And I don't know the base of it because the most confounding part about it all is that it's Will Harris that is continually getting the most snaps, and he's continually being the biggest problem. So you're probably going to see a bunch of guys back there rotating through, and hopefully Tracy Walker stays out there because I think he still is the one with the most potential. But the Lions, for whatever reason, they're bringing in these veteran guys. Maybe that's it. They just want a veteran presence. Dean Marlowe and Daryl Worley, who I thought was a corner until last week when he played safety. Those are guys who those guys took about a third of the snap each. And they're going to do some 3 safety looks, plenty of them probably when they get out of their base formation there. But it's another thing where it's trial and error. They're trying to figure out something that works right now in that secondary because it's bad. And I don't know if it's just lack of talent at some point. It does feel like there's just communication errors when you have that many young players playing together, when you have a rotating lineup of guys who've never played together. There's going to be communication errors, but like there's a lot of athletes in that secondary. And, I do really like Aaron Glenn a lot. And so I'm not going to bag on him or his coaching so far. I just think the Lions are trying to figure out something that works before, that they settle on a lineup.
So I mean, that seems like a secondary that can stop Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson then.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Easily.
Totally. Yeah.
No question.
So put on like a scale of 1 to 32 to pick a random number that has nothing to do with the reality constructed around them. Where would you put the Lions offense and where would you put the Lions defense?
Offensively speaking, it's tricky because they look crazy efficient at sometimes. And I was just searching for some stat to justify my belief in that. And the only one I could really find is Football Outsiders has a offensive drive efficiency stat that basically measures like the percentage chance that every 4 downs you create a first down or a touchdown, and they're 10th in that. The problem is, like last week, they took 5 trips inside of Chicago's 10-yard line and came away with a total of 7 points.
Okay, but one of those is that weird-ass fumble that's not going to happen again.
True. There was also a strip sack fumble.
That might happen again. Yeah.
Then there was a 4th and 1 in which Jared Goff missed a wide open receiver. Then there was a 4th and 5. Those pass got tipped at the line. So
you should just done what Bo Nix did. Just keep running around. That guy will get open.
Sure. So I mean, I guess the problem is this team hasn't proven they can do it in big moments. Then I know that's kind of like a football commenter type of thing to say, but like when the pressure's on, this team just, I don't know if they can make enough plays. I don't know if they're consistent enough. At some point, Jared Goff is going to make a backbreaking mistake, whether it's a pick 6 at the end of one half or, on that Monday night game against the Packers, just decided to let the ball slip out of his hand a couple times. But I do think they're kind of okay. Like, I do think they can hang with teams for a long time until like that one big disastrous error happens, and then everything flies out the window.
When you price in that disastrous error, where do they rank?
Yeah, 23rd.
Yeah, very specific. Wow. Okay. And then defensively,
I mean, again, at times it looks like they can hang, but most of the times it just looks like this is a team that needs a year to figure it out and needs players that aren't currently on the roster. So I don't think I can rank it any higher than 30, and I'm probably not 31. We'll say 31. There's probably a bad team out there.
It's probably a bad team out there.
I mean, the Chiefs are really bad apparently on defense. Bucks are struggling. Not that bad?
I mean, they're bad. I'm just not Lions bad.
31st. I'm sticking with it.
All right. That brings us to the Lions' best unit by far, special teams. I guess, I don't know, Austin Siebert's whatever. But Jack Fox.
Yeah.
Get a load of this guy.
You've brightened my day now. I feel like I've been revitalized after just talking down on the entire roster. Hey, Jack Fox is a good punter.
Yeah, he's like a top 2 punter, and he might not be 2.
Yeah,
he's good. Tell me more about him.
No, it's a punter. Sorry, I can't even fake excitement for a good punter. I'm one of those people that's like destroy special teams. I don't want them anymore.
You do have former Gopher punter / kicker Ryan Santoso on the practice squad.
Yes, he was the kicker for the last 2 weeks because Siebert had COVID, or was on the COVID list, I should say. Can't.
Yeah, we don't know. You're on the COVID list
but he
for
was
that long.
out for at least. He was out for 10 days. So.
Oh, okay. So you probably had it then.
You probably. But yeah, I think I can't say for certain, but I think Siebert's their guy this week.
Do you have confidence in him?
No.
Right.
I
respect it. I cover the Vikings.
Right. And, the one thing that Lions fans could always hang their hat on is a good kicker, having, Matt Prater for the past 6-7 years, whatever it was. And then before that, Jason Hansen. And the Lions kind of cheaped out on kicker this year. They could have brought Prater back. He wanted to be back. But, yeah, I guess I can't completely blame the Lions of being like, should we really skimp out? Should we really,
pay down?
Pay down, whatever.
Sure.
A kicker in a rebuild year, is it really going to be that important? And turns out, no, probably isn't.
Turns out, the 3 points that he would have made, it didn't matter.
Right, exactly. They've kicked like one field goal in the past 2 games, so who cares? It does still hurt a little bit watching Matt Prater go out there and kick 60 whatever yarders over there in Arizona. But if that's the one thing that I could be happy about with the Lions right now, I'm more than willing to just pass on that and be like,
I don't need that happiness in my life.
Exactly.
It's deceiving. All right. I think I'm going to check the odds real quick, but I think the Lions are 8.5 point. Oh, wow. The line is moved.
Ooh, it's jumped up. Last I saw it was 7.
So the open I saw was 8. Now the consensus is 10.
Oh,
that's probably a reaction to the injury news.
Yeah.
That might be a Hawkinson related move.
Sure. Right.
Okay. So Minnesota favored by 10 at home, over under 49, which if I did the math, what is that? Like a 25 to 15, something like that. 24.5 to 14.5.
Sure.
That's wrong. It doesn't matter. What's your score prediction? Who cares what that is? What's your score prediction?
I'm technically writing my preview tonight. But I did.
Well, give us a preview.
I don't mean to say this to you, but I did join a different Vikings podcast earlier this week and threw out a score predictions.
Okay, wait, hold on. Was it Lockdown Vikings?
No, it wasn't. No.
Okay. Well, we're good then.
Okay. But I threw out 31-17, and I think I'll stick with that, which is right in line with the over/under and really the overall line of the game. And I mentioned this on our pod. I think the game plan for the line is just kind of what it's always been offensively, which is run the ball, limit possessions, eat clock. Hope that by the time
it's an 8 possession game, so that you mathematically cannot be blown out by too much.
Exactly, and be in the game in the fourth quarter, and then who knows what happens? Maybe there is some sort of Vikings implosion. I've heard that you guys have done that before.
That's famously that's like a
and they might. I think they could have success at that. I don't know what's going to happen on this offensive line, but like I said,
I think what other teams have found is that you cannot engineer a Vikings explosion or implosion rather, because they will overcome that effort and implode in a completely different, unexpected way.
They will only implode on their terms.
Yeah, no, it's very like empowerment. Yeah,
but yeah, I think offensively they have a chance to really eat up some time of possession, and that has to be their goal, because defensively, I don't know how they have an answer at all at this point. They're just too beat up in terms of injuries. Their secondary is just too young, too inexperienced, too getting their act together at this point. Where, you mentioned it, like the wide receiving core is just going to eat this team up alive, and the only thing that I think is going to stop the Vikings is themselves, and maybe a stubbornness to run the ball in this game.
All right.
Which I think the Lions might have a chance to be at least okay there.
More yards, Justin Jefferson receiving, or Jared Goff passing?
Well, I'd have to go with Jared Goff passing, because you look at his passing yards, I think he's probably averaging about 250, 260 a game, because they just have to throw the ball all the time. And
right, but Hawkinson's been in those games, right?
True. That is true. But, you know, he started to get the wide receivers involved a little bit against the Bears, and maybe that progression continues, that chemistry continues. It'll probably be pretty close, though. I do think both might be over 200.
So if it was Justin Jefferson or any two Lions receivers, it would be Justin Jefferson.
Yes,
okay.
100%.
Okay.
No question.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for coming on. If you've got anything you want to plug, let us know.
Yeah, I mean, just, you know, prideofdetroit.com where all of my writing goes. I do occasionally write for AP as well, but mostly Pride of Detroit. My pseudo statistical breakdown goes live every Friday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern. It's called On Paper. I think you guys might be interested in it. So if you're a numbers guy and you like weird charts,
never heard of numbers.
Head over to Pride of Detroit.
Don't know what those are.
It's not as fancy as the stats you use. It's really basic stats because I'm lazy.
All right. Well, thanks so much, man. You can find Reisman on Twitter at God, this is some stupid pun, right?
It's
Detroit Online at Detroit Online. Great. Eliminated the mustache. I'm very proud of you. Eliminated the mustache.
It's coming back in a month.
It's not coming back. No way.
It is. Yeah,
all right. Yep. Well, head over to his Twitter where he'll promote a Twitch stream that'll include him having a mustache in a couple of months. That's the best reason to follow. Otherwise,
thank you.
You can head over. Don't worry about it. You can head over to prideofdetroit.com, catch his work and the work of his colleagues.
All right. Before we get into the mailbag, there's a bit of weird Vikings news that could really only happen to the Minnesota Vikings, and it needs to be discussed so at least we can stop getting emails about it.
Yes, so many questions about this.
It was almost like there was no way to avoid it the last 2 days, so let's just talk about it for 5 minutes and call it good. So, about the Zodiac Killer.
A normal transition in a normal podcast about the Minnesota Football Vikings.
Exactly. So about the Zodiac Killer being a Vikings fan. It was revealed this week that investigators are super confident that the person who was, in fact, that they believe to be the Zodiac Killer died a couple of years ago, and while going through pictures of the man, he was seen as wearing a Vikings hat.
Multiple pictures. It wasn't just like he picked it. Like, it's very clearly he's a Vikings fan.
Yeah. So let's just knock out a couple of quick questions here. Spooked Vikings fan asks, why does the Zodiac Killer being a Vikings fan just make sense?
Okay. Well, okay. No, before I answer any of these questions, I have to get this off my chest. This dude is almost certainly not the Zodiac Killer. Like, no relevant authority has determined that he's a person of interest. It's just some people decide, like, they call themselves the case breakers, and they just decided that he is. And the only evidence that they've released to the public is like the forehead scars of one photo look a little bit like the forehead scars made by a sketch artist. And like the rest of the evidence is like bad. Like the closest thing they have to a connection to a victim is actually someone who's not actually suspected to be a Zodiac victim. It was like later revealed that she actually wasn't a victim of the Zodiac Killer. That was just a hoax by a teenager at the time. A disgusting hoax, kind of a weird thing to do, but there's no evidence linking her to the Zodiac Killer. And then the rest are just like these random coincidences. Like, you know, he painted for 40 years, and one of the pieces of evidence for the Zodiac Killer is that there's this watch with paint on it. And, you know, if you use his like name in a cipher, you'll reveal a different message in one of his letters, which sounds pretty compelling until you realize they won't like reveal the message or the cipher or what letter it was. They just say that that's the case. And then also this happens to be the same group that has done this multiple times, like with Jimmy Hoffa's killer and DB Cooper. And every single time they try to use this to sell a movie deal. And the lead guy for this group happens to be a movie executive. And they produced a documentary on DB Cooper for the History Channel, which at this point in time, I mean, people these days kind of know them to be just this awful conspiracy theory documentary channel. At one point, it was credible, not when it ran this documentary. So I just want to get this out of the way. Almost certainly not the Zodiac Killer. The FBI don't believe it. The Riverside Community Police don't believe it. But for the purposes of the bit, absolutely a Vikings fan. That's 100% totally on board. It totally makes sense. The incidents that are linked to the Zodiac Killer line up with the Vikings' first run at a Super Bowl. And of course they fall short. Yeah, it's perfect. And so the Vikings put together one of the best defensive seasons of all time in 1969 when you do things like arrow adjustment and stuff like that. And this happened to be while the killer was active, and then the killer stops, and the Vikings no longer win Super Bowls, or they don't win any Super Bowls, right? So it just kind of keeps going. So yeah, the Zodiac Killer wasn't caught. The Vikings, I guess if you want to call this a curse, the curse remains alive. The guy who's accused of being the alleged Zodiac Killer dies in 2018. So after the NFC Championship game, had this person died before the NFC Championship game, maybe the Vikings would have won and been able to play a Super Bowl in their home stadium. So that's kind of the theory. Maybe I don't know. It's new, right? We can work on how this curse works, like collaboratively together as we as a community discover and work through the curse ourselves. I mean, this is kind of a unique opportunity, right? Because we've mostly in our curse investigations corner have found curses after the fact and have discussed them, but now we get to be part of the narrative of the curse. Is it the Zodiac Curse? That seems a little bit too close to the Zodiac Killer, but the Zodiac Killer Curse is like too much of a mouthful.
No, I think you have to do the full thing. I think it's like a Tribe Called Quest. You got to do the whole thing.
The Zodiac Killer Curse?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, the real question is, so I think someone asked, like, did being a Vikings fan drive the Zodiac Killer to do what he did? And the answer is no, because the events connected. I don't want to keep on saying he killed people, right? Because it becomes darker and more morbid when I talk about it like that way. But I guess I have to say it. When he was active in killing people, the Vikings were good, so they weren't driving him to kill anybody. The concern here is that Luke Braun tried to plot a timeline for when the killings occurred and when the Vikings games were. And the problem is, as he's plotting this out and he's trying to connect it with the Ed Thorpe Trophy curse, which doesn't exist anymore because they found the trophy back in 2015 in the possession of the Green Bay Packers, and it turns out the Vikings never owned it, so that curse doesn't actually exist. But he's trying to connect it to this curse, and the more he works on it, at least on Twitter, the more it seems like he's trending towards the unfortunate conclusion that the Vikings were only good when the Zodiac Killer was active, and that when he stopped, the Vikings couldn't win anymore. And that's like really dangerous territory. Like, we have talked about how curses should not enter this kind of territory. Like, when we first talk about sports team curses, that's the first thing we brought is like, we got to be careful. Like, you can't kill the last remaining member of the old football club. Like, that's crazy. We cannot lead someone to that conclusion. So I'm worried about the direction. So we have to take an active role in shaping the curse and just saying, now that the Zodiac Killer, allegedly, but like, obviously not, but now that the Zodiac Killer is at rest, the Vikings have the ability to capitalize on their opportunities. Now, of course, they haven't created many new opportunities since then, but it's in the cards.
So does this mean we should fire Zimmer because he's not taking advantage of this open window?
Well, the window is now infinite. So I don't think so. We'll see. I think maybe the news about the Zodiac Killer could spur some wins, kind of put the Vikings on like the 2008 track to get into the playoffs, but and then win in the playoffs. So this could be galvanizing.
Yeah, it's possible. A couple of quick questions here. Oli Udon Noodlestan asks, for a Reef Serial Killer corner, how do we remove the Zodiac Killer curse from this team? I think burning all his letters at the 50 would do it.
Okay, so I just get weird vibes about burning historical documents. So, but I get it. He's dead, so we're good. I think the curse is over. But like, the thing is, when a curse is over, you still have to like get there and win games. you have to create your opportunities to win. So it's not that the Vikings are bad because of the curse. It's that the Vikings, when they're good, can't win because of the curse.
Yeah.
So the Vikings will then now have to be good and test the limits of that curse. And if they lose in another NFC Championship game or a Super Bowl, and those are the only two that count, then we can discuss other ways to cleanse the Vikings of the curse. And then we can, like, maybe burning all the letters of the 50. But for now, I think we can say he's dead, curse is over. Now the Vikings have to take advantage of the opportunity.
Don asks, who's worse, a Vikings fan who was a popular serial killer or a Vikings fan who trains his son to be a cannibal?
Well, okay, but didn't we recently figure out that it might be multiple children?
That was something that was brought up as a possibility, yes.
Okay, so
there's not a small army of them here. That's for sure.
2 is a lot.
It's more than
most.
1
is a lot.
It's more than most, admittedly, but no, that's not what we're doing here.
It's twice as many as more than acceptable.
by whose rules? Yours or society's, Joker? No, let's get into the actual mailbag here. Real mailbag time. Let's go to Alex, who asks, on the last podcast, Arif talked about how coaches can lose the locker room, but it takes a lot and there are a ton of variables. What would it take for Zimmer to lose the locker room? Bonus, has any coach ever lost the locker room faster than Urban Meyer?
Okay.
So let's start with the last one first.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. This is something that has definitely happened. Maybe not so much in football, but if you look at when Mike Brown, this is like a recency thing, fine. But when Mike Brown was the head coach of the Lakers, he attempted to apply this new offense to the Lakers, and it went so poorly that he was fired after the first 5 games of a basketball season.
That's within the context of basketball season, that's faster.
Yeah. When you think about how many days that is, you're basically looking at a week and a half to 2 weeks, maybe. That is something. So yeah, it's like he got fired while having Kobe Bryant, Pau Gasol, Dwight Howard, like everybody, there's a number of people on this team, and they were just so bad those first 5 games, and that offense, that plan he wanted to implement was so bad that they canned him after 5 games.
I feel like his gift to tenure ratio is astronomical, right? Because there's still Mike Brown gifts in the gift search for tenor and stuff like that. That's wild. Or Mike Brown as an LA coach. Yeah. That's wild to me that he was able to do that with just a 5-game career.
It was, I will say, he was easily a laughing stock. And even when he went to another team, people were still talking about how quickly he got canned in Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah. I will say that from beginning of fall to end of fall, no one did it faster than Bobby Petrino. But that occurred late in the season, right? That occurred after 13 games. So that from beginning to end of season, that's obviously much slower than Urban Meyer. But from beginning of losing the locker room to end of losing the locker room, near instant, right? The laminated notes in the locker room of each player. You're done. That's it. And mind you, quitting kind of doesn't count as losing the locker room, but it kind of does, because very often coaches will leave for other teams, and the players from the previous teams will have good things to say about the coach, or the people who've worked with the coach will have good things to say about the coach. Famously, Bobby Petrino does not have that, extremely famously. So
he doesn't have that, but he does have a crash with a beautiful woman on the back of his motorcycle that was not his wife. That he convinced a bunch of people she was not on that bike when it crashed.
She was not on that bike. She just also crashed.
Yeah.
Another super fast lost locker room. A completely different locker room. Yeah. Wild. That was in the off season too. So he lost the future locker room that hadn't even begun. And then who was it that that got and then lost the Tennessee job. Greg Schiano. He got the Tennessee job. A bunch of people got mad. He lost the Tennessee job. So that's not a lost locker room. That's a lost booster room, but still impressive. Okay, the question itself was, what would it take for Zimmer to lose the Vikings locker room? I think just being fundamentally unfair, because he's a harsh guy, right? But like the thing that makes harsh coaches work is that they're fairly even about it and fair about it. And if a star player messes up, you take it to them. And if a rookie undrafted free agent messes up, you take it to them and whatever, right? If he starts playing favorites while he does this, or if he starts making excuses for like Patrick Peterson or Eric Hendricks or whatever, I think you can lose a locker room really quickly. So I think that's going to be part of it. Also, if they keep losing, and then also if he like refuses to adapt, which I know we talk a lot about Zimmer and how old school his philosophy is, but as a tactician, he adapts remarkably quickly and extremely well. So if he kind of gets set in his ways on the scheme, which I think a lot of people think he does, but he really doesn't, and they continue to lose, that would be another way for him to lose the locker room. And I think the final thing is continuing to call out players in pressers in ways that are unfair. And like the maybe best example of that is Sherry Floyd, when he essentially called out Sherry Floyd for what it seemed like he thought was faking an injury, which didn't happen. It turned out that the physician who performed surgery nicked a nerve and his hamstrings couldn't fire. And so he couldn't. And Zimmer has since indicated that he's regretted that. But that kind of call out in conjunction with, losses that are his fault and being unfair in his criticism of players, that would be the kind of thing that would lose a locker room. And obviously that always occurs in a losing environment more than a winning environment. There are coaches that do lose locker rooms in winning environments. I know that that's happened. I'm trying to think in my head, and I can't really off the top of my head. Maybe kind of famously Mike Ditka, like the 85-86 Bears. But, because they loved Buddy Ryan so much. But you kind of like, that's not like a great example. But like there are coaches who have lost locker rooms in winning situations. But it's pretty rare.
All right, let's go to the next question, which is from Kenneth Allen, who asks, everything points to a Vikings win over the hapless Lions team. That said, we're all Vikings fans, so we secretly all think that the Lions are going to win. How does it happen?
I think it's got to be like on the heels of some of like their most interesting players. And we talked about some of the players that are more interesting. The most interesting players like doing like crazy stuff. So like Jack Fox continues to pin the Vikings at the 1. Maybe Ryan Santoso is forced to play instead of Austin Seibert. Don't know how that would happen, but he's a former Gopher. He does both punting and kicking if he kicks a couple of field goals. Just a Minnesota guy just doing it to the Vikings just feels like it would be pretty awful. Khalif Raymond has only ever had one game over 70 yards. It was for the Titans against the Vikings. I feel like if that happens again, it'll be like this weird like Marvin Jones situation where Marvin Jones is like an above average receiver, but when he plays the Vikings, he's Randy Moss. Like one of those things, right? So like Khalif Raymond goes off, Jared Goff looks all right. The Vikings miss a bunch of tackles in the run game. Jack Fox continues to pin them at the 1 when they do force punts. Ryan Santoso makes a bunch of kicks. It's just all these little weird things, I think, that add up that you're like, I don't know that any of this is sustainable. And I don't know why it's happening to the Vikings, but I guess it's happening. And I think the funniest thing that could happen is an Everson Griffin strip sack that turns into a forward fumble, which strip sacks really don't do. But if it turns into a forward fumble and it's not like in the last 5 minutes, and then a Lion player scoops it up and advances it, because I think you can do that if it's not in the last 5 minutes, and scores off of that. Like a good defensive play that turns into a freak touchdown that ends up being like kind of the winning score. I just feel like that seems right to me.
I'm personally holding out for a record-breaking field goal.
Oh, that's good. Okay. I don't know that Austin Seibert can do that, but that makes it even funnier, I guess.
Yep, exactly. Ethan asks, who is more likely to be the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals a year from today? Mike Zimmer or Zach Taylor?
Jesus, this is such a good question. If the Bengals were just a little bit worse, this would be an even better question. But like, but right now their standings, they're top of the AFC North, right? So like they're 3-1, right? So you can't really say that Zach Taylor's going to lose his job. But if they collapse after this 3-1 streak, which, it's like built off of, like playing teams like the Vikings, right? Or playing, I mean, they lost to the Bears, right? Like, who does that?
I think they lost to the Bears, but didn't they beat the Steelers?
They beat the Steelers and they beat the Jaguars.
Yeah.
But the Steelers are like bad. Like they're awful right now.
Well, their offense is atrocious. Yes.
Yeah. So they'll pick up like maybe another win, probably against the Lions. They'll get blown out by the Packers. They lose to the Ravens a couple of times. Maybe they get a surprise loss to the Jets, and then Zach Taylor's gone, right? So if they collapse after this hot start, Zach Taylor's gone. I think that's in the cards because their fundamentals are just not there statistically. So I could see that, and at the same time, Mike Zimmer not being able to overcome like a 1-3 record to make it to the playoffs, even with a good team. Mike Zimmer's let go. If Mike Zimmer's let go, and the Bengals don't make the playoffs, they absolutely snatch him up. No question, he becomes the head coach. You talk to like one Cincinnati beat writer or blogger, and they'll absolutely say, yeah, he's going to be at the top of their list if he ever becomes available. So that I think is very likely. Because the Bengals are winning right now, it's hard for me to say that it's Mike Zimmer, but I'm still going to say Mike Zimmer.
All right. Next question is going to be from Raul, who asks, is it just me, or does the Lions coaching staff have an unusual amount of retired NFL talent on it? Who was the best athlete of the bunch?
Yeah, so it's not just you. It is a who's who of like a bunch of players that were pretty good for a while. Like, so obviously Dan Campbell, he was a tight end. They've got Deuce Staley with running backs. He's a running backs guy. Hank Fraley, who I think has been touted as like the next big offensive line coach. I think he may have worked a little bit with the Vikings for a second. But he's been an offensive line coach that of good repute. So he's been in the league for a while. Mark Brunell is their quarterbacks coach. I mean, he was a quarterback, made a couple of Pro Bowls. Aaron Glenn is their defensive coordinator. He's a 3-time Pro Bowler at defensive back. Kelvin Shepard played in the NFL for a number of years. I want to say like 8 years, something like that. They've got Antoine Randall, super recognizable name. He played a bunch of positions, but primarily, I guess, wide receiver. And then Anthony Lynn, he played running back as well. So you've got, I think I covered all of the players. So you've got a number of players, some of whom were genuinely quite talented. Like I said, Antoine Randall, super well remembered, but probably not as talented as like Kelvin Shepard was pretty good for a while. He played linebacker. Aaron Glenn made a number of Pro Bowls. Mark Brunell, was quite good for a very short period of time. Like 95 to 2001 was like really good. And made a couple of Pro Bowls. Maybe should have made one more. I don't know. But I would say, and then Hank Fraley was just solid for a long time. So I would say probably the best player out of all of them is Mark Brunell. Technically, you asked who is the best athlete. That's obviously Antoine Randall. But the best player is probably Mark Brunell, followed by Aaron Glenn. And those are the top two by a distance.
Next question is from Oli Udon Noodlestan, who asks, do you think teams more often win games, excelling beyond the average level of play, or simply don't lose them, being the team that makes less mistakes? Obviously, the former is more exciting, but mistake-free football can give lots of wins.
So when you take a look at the top teams like the Packers, the Chiefs, the Ravens, they don't not make mistakes. In fact, the past 2 years, all three of those franchises have made a lot of mistakes. But they've been insanely explosive at different times. And so that's what's let them win. Of course, the most recent Super Bowl winners, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, are both explosive and tend not to make mistakes. And when they do make a lot of mistakes, they can't sustain that level of explosion. So it seems to be that consistency is more their superpower than it is for those other teams that I just mentioned. The Bills are probably more explosive than they are mistake-free as well. So if we're talking about some of these top teams, that's kind of where we're at. The Rams are interesting because we just watched a uninspiring Rams win, I would say. because I think this year they're kind of in between the two. Stafford was in the MVP conversation again before this final game that we just watched, and that was a very kind of mistake-prone, not very explosive Rams offense. But I still feel like they are more of a explosive team than they are a mistake-free team. But I think they kind of straddle the line. So I would say that it kind of really just depends, because I think if that Chiefs team makes more explosive plays in the Super Bowl, they win. Or if they make fewer mistakes, especially on the offensive line, they win. What is more reasonable to expect? Probably making fewer mistakes. But you could conceivably have seen it, right? And the Chiefs won the Super Bowl not by avoiding mistakes, but by making explosive plays after explosive plays. And in fact, that's the only way they would have made it, because they were able to dig out of some deficits early on. So I don't know that, teams win games more often one way or the other. I think if you're a team that is not one of those top 5 teams and you're attempting to get into the playoffs, it is more often the case that they do that by avoiding mistakes. But I don't think you can win without being exceptional from a playmaking capacity on one side of the ball or the other. So that's kind of the long version of the answer to this.
Ryan asks, for Arif's hot podcast takes corner, Jay Cutler and Sage Steele, huh? And for James's podcast critic corner, disappointed or relieved that the Uncut with Jay Cutler reviews didn't continue. I've decided to answer this first one for Arif and say that yeah, we're going to let the middle-aged white guy answer this one. As far as the Sage Steele conversation is concerned, she has decided that the best thing for her career at this point in her life is to become a character from the Boondocks television show. And if that's what she wants to do, then that's what she wants to do. She is an adult. She can do that. It doesn't mean that we need to give her any more oxygen. Just that is what she appears to want to do. As for the disappointed or relieved portion of the question, I knew stuff like this was going to happen, which is why I was offering to do this, because I wanted to hear Arif just lose his mind as I tried to describe Sage Steele's problems with, the inability to understand irony.
Yeah,
so,
that's fair.
Yeah.
So the thing is, Cutler, we knew going in that Cutler's talked about not vaccinating his kids, right? And not for COVID, but the whole thing, all the vaccinations. We knew who he was going in, so we knew that this kind of stuff was on the table, but that was a lot at once.
Yeah, we knew this. A lot at once. What was the line? We knew this at Vanderbilt. We knew exactly what this was.
Right, yeah. So the Harvard of the South. That's exactly who he is.
Exactly. So I knew this was coming. I just, thought
it was a lot at once.
Exactly. Let's go to DJ, who asks, for Arif's Mr. Useful Cumin Corner, what makes a great homemade taco seasoning? Alton Brown's Taco Potion number 19 came off bland and produced a somewhat abrasive texture. I'm looking for the Bruce Arians of taco mixture. Spicy, robust, and a little sloppy.
All right, so the first thing I recommend is heading over to Binging with Babish and seeing what he does to create a chili paste. Just make less of it and make it a little bit less liquidous, and it makes for a pretty good taco seasoning. So that's the first thing I would recommend if you don't really like the abrasive texture. But I would say that if you want to make kind of your own taco seasoning, I would steal the recipe of people who are really good at it. And I've noticed that Penzi Spices, who I've plugged previously on the show, as just having just really great spice mixes and super high quality spices with a lot of freshness, and just they're just stronger. You can taste it. It's so weird. Even when you buy pepper from them, it's more peppery pepper. They do a really good job of avoiding filler and making sure that the density of flavor in each of these ingredients really stands out. But they also do really good mixes. So they've got a taco seasoning. I think they also have a bowl taco seasoning and a chicken taco seasoning. I've used the taco seasoning. I've really liked it. This is what's in it that I'd recommend you be able to do and mix to whatever proportions you think work for you at home. Paprika, salt, onion powder, tomato powder, cumin, garlic powder, oregano, black pepper, cocoa powder, and allspice. This one is not very spicy, as you can tell from the spice ingredients. So from there, just add in, I like ancho chili powder. That's obviously not super widely available, so just put in chili powder or cayenne powder. Actually, chili powder is probably better than cayenne powder in this situation. But yeah, and add whatever level of spice you want on top of it. But I think each of those ingredients adds something specifically that helps with taco seasoning. Obviously, when they list the ingredients, they list it in order of most to least. So keep that in mind. Not a ton of cocoa powder or allspice, a little bit more paprika and salt, right? But those are great ingredients. I don't know that you'll find like tomato powder. They put that in there. They put corn flour in there a little bit because it's a good thickening agent. I would do the thickening agent kind of separately. I just put kind of a cornstarch slurry together, just a small amount of cornstarch with a small amount of water, mix that together, and then pour that on top of the ground beef when you're all done. But and that'll smooth out the abrasiveness as well. But yeah, I think that's good. And if you want to, if you want like the beefy flavor to come out, it's not a terrible idea with ground beef. It's not a terrible idea to just feel like you're overcooking one side. Like put the ground beef into the hot pan with a little bit of oil and just like sear one side before you do any of the flipping and breaking up and stuff like that. So that should all help.
All right, next question is from Nick Howard, who asks, tomorrow is wear your favorite team gear to work day. I will be rocking the Viking stuff. However, my boss is a Packers fan. How can I make fun of him without getting fired?
I mean, like, it obviously depends on your work relationship. I think, cause I am in a work environment where that's encouraged, right? So like, it's tough for me to relate, right? I would say so long as if you keep it out of stuff that's like, this is what Packers fans think, people in Wisconsin are like this. Like if you keep it out of stuff that's like personal to them and you just make fun of the Packers or you make fun of how stupid the share system is, that's fine, right? But as soon as you make it even indirectly about the person, you're treading into dangerous, dangerous water. So I would say kind of make fun of the whole system, make fun of the fact that they're a fake nonprofit, make fun of the fact that because they're a fake nonprofit, they have to reveal their internal data, which makes it more difficult for the NFL to like negotiate, which is kind of funny. But yeah, I think all of that is on the table. I think wasting one of the best quarterbacks of all time for only one ring is on the table. They'll shoot back with, hey, you don't have any rings. And you just say, yeah, but we didn't have Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers for like 20 years. Probably could have done more with that for 20 years. Yeah, Brett Favre for 1 year already make the NFC Championship game. That kind of stuff. So like, normal Vikings Packers stuff, just avoid the stuff where you talk about the personal characteristics of Packers fans because this person holds a position of power over you for now.
Until you seize the means of production, obviously.
Until you see it, right. Yeah.
I like how that's just become a theme on this show.
yeah. Urban Meyer said it. Yeah, we the players own the team, right? And how you interpret that any other way, then every work environment should be worker-owned cooperative. I don't see any other way to think about that.
If you wanted to spend some money and truly annoy them, you could get a number 12 Aaron Rodgers jersey, like a custom one for the Vikings. Like that would have been fun to do, but that I don't know how you pull off a clothes related burn unless you staple or tape a like piece of paper onto yours and then when he asks what
you like stitch over your Percy Harvin jersey.
Yeah, like what's that paper? Like, oh, this is this piece of paper is worth the exact same as one of those stock things that you guys have in Green Bay, right? Like it means the exact same thing. It's absolutely like you could do that, but
yeah, if you print off a certificate of ownership for just some random thing, don't make it a Vikings one because that just creates opportunities for interesting comebacks.
Yep.
But just create a certificate of ownership for like the company that you work at, and just say, yeah, it's a non-voting share where I don't receive any dividends.
Yeah.
Just like Packer stock.
Just like Packer stock. And let's go to Don from Ohio, who sent me a package here I'll be opening up in a second. Don from Ohio asks, has any player had more ups and downs in such a short time in one season than Cameron Dantzler?
Percy Harvin?
I was going to say either Percy Harvin. Well, he got really high there, but Percy Harvin.
Ups, yeah.
Remember the season with Adrian Peterson as to whether he was or was not going to play? That's most of that's off the field, but that was pretty up and down, and there was a lot of rumors he was going to play, and he started off the season really well, and all of that. So there's that. Let's see. I mean, are we expanding this outside of the Vikings? I feel like we kind of have to keep this in-house.
I think, keep it with the Vikings. Joe Webb, I guess, just because his opinion within the fan base, like shot up, shot down, shot up, shot down. And it wasn't until he destroyed his reputation, kind of. I mean, people still like Joe Webb, but destroyed his reputation as a potential starter in the Packers playoff game. That just kind of died. So there's Joe Webb, I think, is up there. Probably not an offensive lineman, because if they're up and down, that's just bad.
Yeah.
And if Troy Williamson was just slightly better, that would be the answer here. But he just doesn't have enough ups to be part of the up and down conversation.
No. Finally, Don is asking if I enjoyed my gift from his trip to Hawaii. So
you've not opened this yet, correct?
I am opening this now.
Perfect.
And I am prepared for this to ruin my life.
Good.
This is, it looks to be 2 books. It is not 2 books. What the hell is this? I realize this is great podcast material.
No, this is perfect. This is, keep it rolling.
Is this?
Keep the sound effects in there.
Oh my God, it's Aloha Bingo. Really?
Straight from Hawaii.
It's Aloha Bingo. I am...
Does it say which island of Hawaii that this bingo is native to? That it was developed in indigenously?
It does not. Of course not. There's no way. No. Don A is not that thorough. And B, I refuse to believe that somebody would like waste the ink on that sentence, but or on any of that. There's plenty of playing cards and
oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, we're gonna have to play some Hawaiian bingo.
I am not.
We could do that at the live show.
I am not bringing this to Ireland's Four Courts. This will blow up. I'm not bringing something this incendiary on a plane, Arif.
You could ship it. Don shipped it.
No, I'll just send it to the hotel I'll be staying at. Yeah, that.
Yeah.
I'll send that. I'll tell you what. We can play this as long as we can also play public assistance.
Oh no. We cannot do that in a public setting. We can't do that recorded or unrecorded. We can't do that. I can't have a picture of me playing that game go around Twitter.
Is it going to go worse for you than Sage Steele on Jay Cutler's podcast?
Probably not, because people like already don't like her. But I don't want to like test that theory out.
What if we ban cell phones from this particular?
Just put your cell phone in the bag, and then you'll be able to play some bingo. Okay.
Also, you may end up playing some public assistance. Don't ask questions. Why work for a living?
If you don't know what that is, that's fine. That's probably better for you. Come into the room. We'll play some bingo. We'll play some board games.
God. Here's a coloring book and here's an orange juice. Just settle down for a bit. Calm down.
Also, public assistance is like kind of... No, we have a copy, right?
We have a copy, yes.
Yeah. I was like,
the show owns a copy of Public Assistance. I have played it exactly once.
That seems like an issue too, but okay. Yeah, okay. See, because I just looked on eBay. There is a rare sealed in new condition Public Assistance board game that's going for $650 on eBay.
So you're saying that we should try to flip this?
That's not a bad. That's not a bad idea. Well, but you've already opened it, so we can't.
Well, it wasn't exactly factory sealed.
That's fair. Used copies are going for $90, so that's different.
We'll talk about this after the show. Arif, let's finish this up. I still need to figure out a way to get you to play this at some point. Let's finish this up. And what do you have to plug?
So I wrote that piece on the offensive line. I also did a mailbag over at The Athletic where I studiously avoided any Zodiac Killer questions. You can find both of those at theathletic.com/author/Arif-Hassan. I did a podcast with Jeremy Reisman over at Pride of Detroit. You can find that at prideofdetroit.com. I think that's it. Oh, follow me on Twitter at ArifHassanNFL.
There you go. And just remember that NorseCode.threadless.com has all of your Arif Christmas wear needs, which is an odd sentence to say, but people are in fact interested in this. So check that out. NorseCode.threadless.com. Also patreon.com/NorseCode as well. And check out the live show that is going to be happening on November 4th at Ireland's Four Courts. So for Arif, my name is James. Thank you guys so much for listening. And please remember, Case Cookus. And we will be back next week. Norse Code is the largest and only division of Norse Code LLC. You can find Norse Code on the Daily Norseman, SB Nation's official Vikings blog, at dailynorseman.com. You can also find it on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Stitcher, or wherever fine podcasts are aggregated. Our Vikings blogger extraordinaire and generally useful human is Arif Hassan, and he can be found on Twitter at Arif Hassan NFL. You can also find his written work at theathletic.com. I am your podcast host and producer, and my name is James Pagashnik. You can find me at the show's official Twitter feed at NorseCodeDN or my personal account at Big Mono. If you'd like to donate a few bucks to the show, you can make your one-time donation at paypal.me/NorseCode, or you can make a recurring monthly contribution by visiting patreon.com/NorseCode. A donation of $3.50 per month does get you bonus material from the show and much more. Any questions or comments that won't fit in a tweet can be sent to norsecodepodcast@gmail.com. On behalf of the Norse Code staff, we thank you so much for listening.
Our formula is this. We go out, we hit people in the mouth.